Welcome to the Elite Four, a retro Pokemon tournament podcast. My name is Laura.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Rick.
And I'm Mike.
We're going to talk about Gen 1 and Gen 2 and Pokemon Stadium tournaments, as well as our battle strategies and our favorite types of Pokemon. For some background, three of us are siblings. Rick, Michael, and I are all siblings. Tyler is our honorary sibling. We've known him for a long time, so basically the four of us have grown up together in a sense. And we started doing tournaments because we were battling each other a lot, and we got to a point where we wanted to keep playing these retro games because Gen 1 and Gen 2 are our favorite in the series. And we felt like, obviously, the gym leaders and the other trainers you meet in the game are trash and very easy to beat. So we took it up in the stakes of competition level and started making tournaments to battle each other and our friends.
Like, honestly, part of the reason that we did tournaments and stuff was just because we were so used to battling each other all the time. We didn't get a chance to battle other people.
And then obviously the gym leaders are trash and we destroy them, so. But yeah. So we started Pokemon tournaments. I think it was Tyler who decided we should do a tournament format in the sense of, like, the four of us battled a lot, but we had a lot of friends who liked the Pokemon games, also wanted to see if we were as good as we said we were, because some of us have a little bit of egos, Michael. So we wanted to see if we could talk the talk.
It was really interesting how we kind of fell into our own, like, I guess the term is metagame, because what we fell into was the Poke Cup, which was level 50 to 55, and there's, like, no legendaries, like no Mew or Mewtwo, you can't use them. And there's a couple other restrictions, but there's basically, the game doesn't put that many restrictions on that cup, and I think Nintendo used to call it the official cup of, or official competition of Pokemon back in the day. And so we kind of went to that one just because that was easy and broad and it had the most Pokemon you could use in it.
So for Poke Cup, there are 246 eligible Pokemon. That's every Pokemon in the Gen 2 games except Lugia, Ho-Oh, Mewtwo, Mew, and Celebi. You have to do some really large gymnastics to get Celebi.
Now, there's another parameter to that, though, because, yeah, it is level 50 to 55, but the parameter is all of the levels need to add up to no more than 155. So if you had a Dragonite, for example, which evolves at level 55, Dragonair evolves into Dragonite at level 55, you can have a Dragonite, but you gotta know full well that the other two Pokemon are level 50 and level 50, because you can't actually go over that level 155 total between the three Pokemon.
I think that's a great point from Rick, because it's something we'll talk about later is our battle strategies. If you want to bring a Dragonite, you're going to have a different strategy than someone who wants to bring, like, a Starmie, because Starmie's doesn't have a level restriction. He can be good at 50 to 55. Dragonite's going to have to be a 55.
Could you imagine someone showing up and being able to use Tyranitar, Dragonite, and then a level 55 Snorlax?
Everyone's just going to have a bad time.
I personally am not afraid of Snorlaxes because in the first tournament, like, everyone had a Snorlax except for me, because he's just not a Pokemon I like to use. And what's funny is I think between the four of us now, we've done this enough that we kind of gravitate towards Pokemon we also like. Snorlax is an absolutely great choice. I just find him annoying and I don't want to use one, so I don't. But that has made my team a different strategy as far as, like, knowing which Pokemon people are going to bring. And I think that's a topic we can talk about of, in tournaments, we've had, like, almost like a phase of popular Pokemon, Snorlax being one of them. We use Stadium 2 in a Nintendo 64 system because then obviously you're battling on a much bigger screen and it's well set up for an audience. So in all of our tournaments, the final battle, you'd have like 10 to 15 people all watching on like a 32-inch TV watching this battle happen. We're not playing on consoles. We are playing on a large screen where we can have a massive audience and people commentating and, like, doing predictions, and it makes it that much more fun because it feels much more of like a group instead of a tiny 4x4-inch screen.
So I actually didn't know for a long time that Stadium 2 was a game, because I was kind of all about Gen 1 for a long time, and I was over at your guys' house. It was like the first time I drove, because the background is we all used to live in the same town and like go to the same elementary school, but the siblings all moved to a different part of the state, so it was a while before we could hang out all as a group again. And so after quite a few years, and I went over there and we were playing, they said, let's play some mini games on Pokemon Stadium. I was expecting like the Metapod and the Sandshrew games and the Clefairy, but they whipped out Stadium 2, which I didn't even know was a game. And it kind of reignited my desire to play Pokemon and battle and stuff, because there were so many more Pokemon and the changes that they had made between the two generations. That's one of the things that really sets Pokemon Stadium 2 apart. When you talk about like battling, is how it's inclusive of Generation 1 and 2. It's to this day, it's the only battle system that allows you to take two different generations of games and have a battle between them. Like you can't do that with Ruby and Sapphire and Diamond and Pearl. You can move Pokemon from the old generation to the new one, but you can't battle between the two different generations because they made changes that they couldn't reconcile in some way. And Stadium 2 lets you do that, which I think it was great. You didn't need to have gold or silver to play on Stadium 2. And so we all definitely, I would say Pokemon Stadium 2 is our favorite Pokemon game. If you count it with including like the Game Boy games, because you kind of need them in order to beat Pokemon Stadium.
You gave me a retro flashback to the Magikarp game where it's just like Carp for that mini game for like 20 seconds.
And the winner was just random and had no logic behind it whatsoever.
Oh, there's definitely logic. You were just bad at it.
Even if you won, you still feel like you lost.
No, that's the Golbat one.
And, yeah, in the second game.
No, the drowsy one.
The drowsy game, to this day, I still don't quite know how you win. I just push the button at a weird cadence, and sometimes it works.
Well, it speeds up over time, and after a while, the timing is just like, it goes so fast that you're just mashing the A button instead of like timing it correctly. So something that we also did after every tournament was, because the tournaments would go relatively late and we would always be really hungry afterwards, and there's only so many places that are open late, and IHOP is 24 hours, or at least our IHOP is. I don't know if all of them are. And we would all go there and just sit and like lament our missed opportunities, which was always really funny. One time we had almost 30 people at a tournament, so it wasn't just like a couple people. It ended up getting bigger. But Rick came strolling out of this side closet with a video projector that he found in there. This huge, I don't even know, like, it's probably like 10-foot screen. That was pretty sweet.
I think that projector looked like it was probably from 1975, but regardless, it still actually worked. And I was actually very, very surprised to put that up on the wall of the basement of the church, just to actually look at it and be like, huh, this works. This is kind of neat.
And since it was so old, it was projected in SD, which is what the N64 puts up to the TV. Mm-hmm. And so it was completely seamless.
And we can probably talk about why Gen 1 and 2 is our favorite. I will say Gold Silver series is the best in the series, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who agree with that, hopefully. But for me, as I would say, like, I'm not really a huge avid gamer, but I gravitate towards these games. And once the newer generations got to be like so many Pokemon that you can't fathom the 500 that there are, or they changed types, like they added fairy and stuff, that just got to be, for me, too complex, because I was like, I don't have the time to keep up with this. And like Gen 1 and 2 for me, like, super easy to attain. Catching them all is not actually impossible. And then also there's the classic Pokemon that you still see in the newer series, obviously, like a Charizard or like a Pikachu. For me, that's just the series that I'm a fan of.
one thing that we four of us really like about Gen 1 and 2 is that it takes Kanto and Johto and puts them together into this single game and allows you to kind of trade among the 6 games between themselves, as long as you don't try to take a Gen 2 into the Gen 1 game. And it combines the two worlds really, really seamlessly, to be honest. And I think it's just a really nice world build when you transition from 1 to 2.
Yeah, and I think definitely the level 50 to 55 for me has been the most fun because there's just a lot of options and I can raise enough Pokemon in time. Like, let's say we do a tournament next month. I know I have plenty of time without stressing to raise a new set for my team and kind of try them out in the tournaments.
We all raise our own Pokemon, which is something that, like, if you go on and you do some of the online battle tournaments like Pokemon Showdown, you can just generate your Pokemon and use them there. And I know that there's been a little bit of controversy with some actual video game tournaments because people would create Pokemon with Game Shark or Action Replay and then use them in tournaments. And I think we all agree that that's cheating because you didn't actually raise the Pokemon, you just created it on a whim. But we all raise and catch our own Pokemon, so we might have a Pokemon that's really fast or really strong, but has terrible HP or something like that, and it's just what we have to deal with when we're in the battles themselves.
Especially with it not allowing Mews, Mewtwo's, Ho-Ohs, Lugias. No one could just drop a level 55 Lugia and just steamroll the entire tournament.
Hack the game to get a level 55 Mewtwo. The grinding is really tough, especially using a Gen 2 game, because in Gen 1, you have the missing node glitch, so you can get all the rare candies you need, which of course you're missing out on stat experience. But there were a lot of people that wanted to do level 100 when I first started doing the tournaments, but those were the people that ended up not even coming.
And what I liked as somebody who has a fair amount of Pokemon at that level now, because I've done tournaments enough, is it's an easy enough level to raise that it doesn't take weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks to get a solid level 50 Pokemon. Or if you do the level 100 tournaments, the last month you're raising that Pokemon feels so useless because you have the moveset you want. You just have to up the levels.
Yeah, and for people that are just picking up a game and maybe they haven't played in 10 or 15 years, playing through and getting to the point where you fight the Elite Four will pretty much give you a team of 50s.
Yeah, you're pretty much already there. And I will add a caveat. If you're not an experienced Pokemon user, I feel like all of us are fairly experienced in the realm of Pokemon. If we're honestly ranking, of the four of us, Tyler is the best user and generally the one to beat. Although we've all had a tournament win? Or has Rick not had a tournament win yet?
I don't think I've had one yet, but I have gotten close a couple times.
I think we all have seconds. Got to the finals.
Oh, so only Tyler and I have wins? Oh, suck it, brothers.
Well, you won a mini tournament.
No, I won a wedding tournament at a wedding. That deserves props.
That was still legit because all four of us were there.
That's true.
Okay, so this is a nice little tidbit for our listeners. About a year and a half ago, Rick got married, and Mike had his Game Boy Color with Pokemon in his tuxedo pocket the entire night, the entire wedding ceremony.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was funny as hell.
For anyone who's unsure about our commitment to Pokemon, at my brother Rick's wedding, the night before we had a Pokemon tournament, and there's a cute trophy that Tyler had made for the winner of that tournament because we take it that seriously that the night before his wedding, we're like, all right, bring it on.
Hope that becomes a tradition for everybody's wedding.
It better, because that's the only way we do business.
Rick, was your wife okay with it? was she upset we played Pokemon the night before your wedding?
No, she was not. She was actually like, I can't believe you're doing this, but then again, I can actually totally believe you're doing this. So she was kind of like, I mean, have at it, go for it. It's your night. Hang out, do whatever you guys need to, and that's pretty much how we ended the night with some Pokemon. Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, we threw some Mario Kart in there too.
I think some N64 Smash as well.
For those of you, I think all of us are a little bit more involved in the N64 time frame with Super Smash Brothers, Mario Kart 64, all that kind of stuff.
So here's a question for you guys, because I know that like I was in contact with a lot of the people that came to the tournaments because I invited people from work, I invited people from church, I invited people from school, and so I knew a lot of times someone would be like, hey, do you think it would be a good idea to use, I don't know, a ride-on? And I would say, well, you have some advantages and disadvantages, but did you guys sit and like plan amongst yourselves about what you were going to build into your team, or were you hoarding those secrets?
I think for me, I would say Tyler was probably everyone's main informant in terms of the backboard on which everyone would kind of spit ideas, because Tyler is known as the guy that really the guy that knows what he's doing with respect to Pokemon. But I know for a fact I would kind of keep my my team secrets away from Rick and Laura, my siblings, to where like a lot of the Pokemon I would use remain the same, and I would say they're pretty solid, but I would keep a couple secrets to myself in terms of, like, I wouldn't tell them that I was making a new Charizard or something like that. It's like I would just show up with the fresh Charizard that just happens to be one level lower than the original and better in every stat. Stuff like that is what I would kind of hold away from people.
I was very open about the Pokemon I'm bringing, but I would kind of hold back either movesets or stats. If I have a couple Pokemon that have like an amazing special attack stat, they know I'm gonna bring them a champ. They don't know that it's a killer Machamp, and then you're gonna die if he hits you. So that's kind of stuff that I've held back.
I think all four of us really kind of did discuss, what worked, what didn't. But with me, I would be pretty open about usually what I was trying to do, except for one thing.
A wild card.
So if the one wild card. So if it was either, hey, I'm training a new Jolteon, or I'm training a new Tauros, or there would always be one that I would like to keep in my back pocket.
So I will say one of the mistakes I made, and I'm much better at now, in the first tournament, I was bringing 3 Pokemon individually that were good, but because the way the tournaments are set up, it's 3v3, you almost need 3 Pokemon that play well together and kind of offset each other's weaknesses. So I know I've gotten the floor wiped with myself before when I had glaring weaknesses. Like, for example, for a while I did not have, not even an ice type in ice move. So if anybody approached me with something that was weak against ice, I had literally nothing I could do. So I got better about balancing not only good Pokemon, but good Pokemon that worked well together. And it took me probably till tournament 3 to realize, oh, I'm losing because my Pokemon don't work as a team.
Mm-hmm. That was a weird thing, actually, that all of us learned at the tournaments, because you can use some like team cohesion when you're playing through the game, but generally you just had a lot of like standalone Pokemon. Like, here's my Snorlax, he's going to go out and he's going to beat the opponent until he faints, and then I'm going to send out something else. And I think that's how almost everyone, except maybe Connor, who's a cousin of mine, he was into having some weird team strategies from the first tournament. But I think most people just kind of went in with that one-off Pokemon, and we kind of stumbled into discovering that having Pokemon that work well together is really what helps people win.
I think I'm somebody who's probably made the most progress and clearly has a tournament win, and my siblings do not, as far as knowing like why stats are important, why movesets are important, why balancing a team is important, because I think that's a big thing that when I played the game, you can beat the Elite Four with a Pidgeot at level 100. Like, you don't actually need to be a good trainer to beat the Elite Four, but when you're playing other players that are good, you need to actually know what you're doing.
But yeah, the Pokemon that we picked we definitely stumbled into things that worked and learned hard lessons for things that didn't. Like, I know that my cousin Bailey used a Gengar that knew Hypnosis and Dream Eater, which sounds like something that you should do because, oh yeah, you put them asleep and then you regain health. But Hypnosis is like super inaccurate, and you can wake up. There's a chance you'll wake up and you won't know that when you're choosing Dream Eater. And so like that strategy doesn't really work super well.
What? Nothing happened.
But those were all things that we just learned by having these tournaments. And we would learn them and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to try this differently next time when we got to have the new tournament. When's it going to happen?
And then what's also kind of fun about the tournaments is when you start to see some of the same regular players like we did, you know, like Tyler, Rick, and there was another friend of Tyler's who also was the name Mike, who were, I would say, by and large, probably the best trainers and best battlers among the group. And so a person like me would kind of gear my team to try to beat Tyler or somebody, or try to beat my brother, or, you know, beat the other Mike. And so then you start really trying to figure out, it's like, okay, what kind of types, okay, what can I beat, you know, who's going to have like kind of the least expected, you know, who can I really surprise people with. And that's kind of one of the topics that we definitely ended up focusing on as people training a team, is trying to throw a curveball in there, a nice low and away curve, get them reaching.
Yeah, the first tournament was funny because everyone had a Starmie, and everyone thought that their Starmie was a secret weapon because it was a water type that could learn an electric move.
Kind of joked that everyone raises a Starmie and every single one is the same.
There were so many. And actually, Rick, I don't know how your Starmie is as fast as it is. We should look at its stats because you have the fastest Starmie I've ever seen.
My Starmie is legit. So, and for those of you who also don't know, Starmie's also like part psychic. So sometimes I'll have a psychic move on there, which like throws everyone for a loop.
We should look as a sidebar in the background. We can look it up, but we should look at like what the average speed for Starmie is and then actually report what Rick's is.
Yeah, the movesets often are really similar.
Except my Starmie is just a Trek Star.
We have a lot of quotes and a lot of one-liners from that first tournament, but one of them that I said earlier is, "That's the fastest Starmie I've ever seen," was someone's sidebar comment to watching this battle. Because I think you were faster than a Gengar?
Yeah, it outran a Gengar and some other electric type, and it was like, wait, no way.
It could not have
like,
been a Jolteon, was it?
No.
Oh, but you had Quick Claw on that Starmie.
Also true, yes.
What move did you have? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, I had the Starmie holding Quick Claw.
Oh, that's right.
So even though I was paralyzed, I still struck first in a lot of instances because of the Quick Claw on top of it. In Generation 2, you can actually have Pokemon hold the items, and sometimes each individual item gives like a special perk, like a berry will give them like 10 extra HP when they're kind of low, or Quick Claw, for example, will give your Pokemon the ability to strike first, even if they are slower. So there's a benefit to kind of not just move set and stats, but also to which item you kind of allow the Pokemon to hold.
So I looked up the stats while you guys were chatting, and
Awesome.
just on a base stat or a base Pokemon, Starmie would be more likely to be faster than a Gengar, but their speeds are almost the same. As a max stat, Starmie is only 5 points faster, and that's max stat.
I think there's definitely something to be said for shenanigans that happen in Pokemon tournaments, especially when you're playing other people at your level, because in the actual video game itself, not very often are you playing somebody who like has Pokemon at your same level. I feel like as you're going through the game, you're generally trashing most gym leaders and most of the other trainers. So when you come up against trainers that had Pokemon at your level, there's way more shenanigans. And the way we seed our tournaments is by random. We don't go in with pre-rankings. We just throw a random seed. And I know Tyler can talk about how he does it. It's essentially a bracket system. We do a 2-loss elimination because we feel that if you raise a whole team for a tournament, you want to do a 2-loss elimination. 1 loss can be a little bit painful if you get smoked by somebody who just got lucky in accuracy, because it's happened many a times.
Something fissure.
That's complete trash. I will say, maybe not for this episode, I played somebody who caught this Tauros at level like 50, so they didn't even raise it, got lucky, caught it, fissured me twice, knocked out my first 2 Pokemon because it hit.
Oh, knockout!
So I'm starting 1 Pokemon left, down to a Tauros. She is uninjured. And I was like, how did Fissure hit twice in a row? This is shenanigans. I don't know where that Tauros is from, but it's cheating.
That was my cousin that did that. It was actually a Rhydon,
Oh, okay.
and you just randomly caught it because it was the correct level. You might be getting confused with my Tauros of Doom. The tournaments. So after you guys scattered to the 4 corners of the country for a few years with like college and everything, I still had a few tournaments in town here, and I changed the format from double elimination bracket style to like more round robin stuff. And that was because people were so butthurt about losing so fast. And I can totally understand that. Like, if you spend a month and a half raising your team, picking your Pokemon, planning out everything, and then you lose in 10 minutes, like, that sucks. But yeah, I've actually sat and tried to do, because what happened was, I think whoever you sent out first, you wanted to switch to your Starmie because it was a Rhydon. Obviously, Starmie Rhydon is like totally in your favor. And she used Fissure and it killed you. And then later on, she killed one of my Pokemon on a switch as well. And I was curious to see if switching makes Fissure more accurate. And so I sat and just like practiced it, battling against myself on Stadium for a while. And it's not, but just sitting there and practicing, I did have runs where Fissure would hit like 4 times in a row. And it's just like chance. But if you give chance enough of a window, then you'll get crazy things like that. And I think another thing that happens is, like, when you play through the game, you don't really freeze your opponent's Pokemon that often. Like, you might use Blizzard 100 times and freeze one opponent when you're playing against just the CPU. But people get frozen constantly at these tournaments. And like, some people, they get quite upset about it.
And we can definitely talk about all the shenanigans that have happened, because obviously that Rhydon that had Fissure, I know Rick had a Furret that was insane. I have a pretty good Lapras. There's a lot of shenanigans that happens, especially with getting frozen solid. And I think Rick should talk about his Furret in that battle in our first tournament.
This Furret is, first of all, a champion. So Furret is not a good Pokemon at all to bring to a tournament like this. But why bring a Furret? I don't know. First tournament, versatility, call it what you will. The only way I could eventually win, because I was, all the way down on my HP, on my health, was just like freeze it. And I remember looking at the screen, looking at my opponent, and being like, the only way I can win is freeze it.
And I remember, because this was a battle we were all watching, it was one of the last ones of the night, I remember Tyler looking at Rick and saying, your only chance is if you freeze it.
And it was against a Machamp. Like, a Machamp versus a Furret is a nothing battle. That's like a 0-100 type battle.
After Tyler saying that, I look over, click Ice Punch. I remember looking at the screen and going, freeze it!
Oh, it's frozen solid!
Bam! Machamp's been frozen solid. I'm just like, yes!
The entire room was like, no way. Because back to what Mike said earlier, it's very hard to get yourself unfrozen in a battle. So that's just like, this Furret's trash this Machamp. And everyone was like, is this happening? Is this actually happening?
In reality, yes. It is happening.
An unbelievable, just hand of God freeze from the Furret.
It's one of those things that, like, if we didn't have that and other, like, stupid things happen at tournaments, I don't know if it would have been something that caught on as much. Because, if you just go in and it's like, oh, my Golem got surfed and I lost, or oh, my Venusaur got hit by Fire Blast and I lost, that's just what is expected. But having like something stupid and unexpected and crazy like that happen was something that kept people coming back. Here's a question for, I know that Mike has done this a few times, and I've done this quite a bit. Have you guys ever re-raised a Pokemon that you were already using? Let's say you had a Charizard, took it to the tournament, didn't quite do as well as you hoped, and then you looked at the stats and were like, oh, he's actually a little bit slow. Have any of you like gone back and started with Charmander again and raised up to improve those stats?
I literally did it with Charizard and my Snorlax, whose name is Patrick and Patrick Jr.
I want to do it with my Arcanine. I'm just not sure if it's worth it because I made some changes to my team strategy. And Arcanine, for me, he's actually not an amazing Pokemon. I just like that Pokemon a lot. So back to what I said earlier, sometimes I'll use Pokemon that I just like better. But he's one that I would go re-raise because his defense is pretty low for an Arcanine.
I'm looking at my 2 Charizards, the one that I originally raised and then the one I breeded from it. And his defense is actually worse than the original one, but his special attack and attack is actually much, much better.
So you have your Game Boy out right now, Mike?
So my junior Charizard, his attack 124, defense 110, special attack 145, which is pretty solid for a fire Pokemon. Special D 121, speed 125. That's the second one.
Well, since this is our first podcast, we're still working on a cool, fancy outro.
Wham! Out of there!
So for this one, it might be a bit of an abrupt end, but we'll dive into more strategies and some of our favorite pokes, who we think is underused, who we think is overused as we move forward in this podcast. But I think that'll wrap up Elite Four Retro Pokemon Tournament podcast. I'm Laura.
Tyler?
I'm Rick.
I'm Mike.
If you had any questions or comments or want us to dive anything, give you some suggestions for your Pokemon, we have a Gmail, and it's elite4podcast@gmail.com.